Hey people, I'm going to show y'all some ancient history that no world government ever wants you to know. But I'm going to start with a little story here, lead up into it. Tuesday I had moved about 30,000 pounds of steel around so I could access my old truck that was hidden over here in the corner. And I was pretty sore and hungry, so I took a lower tab and went on out to the poorhouse, where I proceeded to drink beer and eat tacos. I remember on Tuesday they used to have these $1.25 tacos, which are now $1.50, but it's the best tacos I ever eat. And so the girl was there. She didn't know my name, so she put me down as one nice guy. So I understand, somebody who doesn't remember names well. I would draw a picture of you. Oh, he's the nice guy. Or did she think I was gay because I was drinking Blue Moon? A girlfriend from Florida turned me on to that about 20-something years ago, and I liked it. She told me it was a girly beer. So y'all let me know if you in the service business. Does one nice guy mean he might be gay or what? And I didn't eat 10 tacos at one time. I only ate 4 crunchy ones. Had a couple more at midnight. I ordered them soft ones to go for the next day. But that one nice guy makes me think, and said the Lord God, it is not good to be for the man alone. And that's a misreading. It is not the man alone. It is not good for men to be alone. You don't put a bunch of men on a submarine and send them out for 9 months, because they become faggot. And you should eat from it. To death you shall die. And come her a faggot. And that's what it says just before it says it's not good for the men to be alone. And so this is an ancient story, and everybody thinks the ancient Greeks were gay. And it says here that they had at least 5 different varieties of same-sex relations. Well, they must have had 5 different sexes going on in ancient Greece. But there was no ancient Greece. Greece just means backwards Greece, backwards sex. They're not doing it right. And it was actually just a story making fun of the Romans and the rape of the Sabine women. The story was that they was all queering up the Greeks, which means gay Romans. They were all queering up. They all liked little boys, and they were losing population, and so they had to go kidnap the Sabine women, the French women, to create families so they didn't disappear. And that's actually what this story about God creates man and woman and puts them in the garden. And actually the woman was already created. It's the kidnapping of the Sabines is what the story's about. So it's been about a year since I've been reading, and I just got back to reading again. I went back to the beginning of Genesis in the Hebrew, and I caught a couple tricks I'll show you later. And today I just went back to this Greek to compare it, and I caught a couple more tricks that helped to make it read easier. I started at Genesis 2:4, which is actually the beginning of the book of Genesis. It doesn't start till 2:4. The rest of the chapter 1 and the beginning of 2 is the prelude to the book of Genesis. And I put them side by side to compare. And this is the Septuagint, which is different from this later written. And I mark it in the yellows where they change the word Lord God. They change it up here where it was Lord God, and here where it's Lord God it wasn't. And just a couple other changes, a capitalized A and an N added here. And the reason being is it changes the meanings in when you change reading directions, that you see more of here and less of here. And same as the Hebrew, if you're reading the Paleo, you see less of the reading direction changes. So in my past couple movies, I showed you a couple things that I learned. But here's the latest one I just learned yesterday. This is the word they call Jehovah. It's just a I-E-V-E, or a Yod-He-Vav-He. And the I-E becomes a A, and this becomes a A-V-E. A-V-E-S, the Aves. The birds on A, the I-E becomes the A again. It starts with A, reads backwards. The L followed by the A becomes an N. And the Aves on at, backwards again. The Aves on it share. The birds on it share. So this Lord God here is the tree. All the birds are up in the tree sharing. And you see it in that ancient Egyptian art, often features birds in a tree, specifically in the famous Tree of Life. Very common theme from around ancient Egypt. So when you look at this, you're looking at the Lord, the Aves, and from all share of the Lord God of earth. The Aves on at share. So mark another one up for Lucky. She's the one that said years ago that she believes the trees are God. And that's exactly what this says. And you'll see the same word for tree. It's the same base word for God, Allah. The Aves in at share was in. And I'll get back to that Hebrew in next movie. But I'm going to study on this Greek here. But the ancient Greek and the Hebrew are both written in the British language. And the Greek is simply a parody of the Hebrew writing. And you see it, when he was told, the trees from which you could eat, food for yourself to eat. Well, it's like hiring a bunch of migrant workers out there in the field, or a bunch of slaves out there in the field. Hey, you put all the pretty fruit in the basket for sale, but the ones that bruise, if age, if you bruise a fruit out there in the field, as it ages, it's going to rot a lot faster. Well, that's the ones you can eat. You can eat the bruised fruit, the bruise if age, the ones that are going to rot in this parody of the Hebrew Bible. And then you're at the apode, the odes and apodes, and this is the part of a song after the strophe. In all the ancient theater, the song and the act would move from the left side of the stage to the right side of the stage. It would all move. And then the song would turn at the apostrophe, apo, the away, a strophe to turn, apostrophe. And this was the apode. And you plainly see that they're trying to force something on it here, because epi, they say, means upon the song, but it's not. It's away. And that's when they turn around and they reshift everything to the left side of the stage and start again. After the song plays through its choral ode, then it'll be followed by the strophe and then the antistrophe. But it's plainly coming from this apo. Apo meaning away from, opposing, on the other side. When you see a full moon, that's because it's apo of the sun. It's on the opposite side, and a strophe to turn. And that's when everything turns back, short part of the ode. So you had all this part of the tune go on, and then this is the last line before God makes women, and it's the apode, and it's a little short line to reset, to go back to the beginning. And apode to what's, the XWTS, what's allowed of. The apode to what's allowed of, what you're allowed to do. From the tree of the knowing, the gina, and a K followed by the E is a L, a gina slain. That's what we do when we're 18 years old. We want to go out and conquer some ass, the gina slain. and uphold to what's allowed to the Gina slain, a calling upon her on of. And fagest, that means to ingest from the wrong side. Fagest in hap of two wed on. Comer a faggot, hap of two, attain it a pot of his tea. Attain it when you get a pot of his tea. Don't drink the Bud Light. Don't. Old man invites you in to have some tea. Beware of the tea he's cooking up. The tea. Uphold, and the turn around of the song, and to start again. Uphold to what's allowed of a Gina slain, calling upon her on. That's a hooker. It's a dude looks like a lady. The calling upon her on. That's evil. That's not a woman. They try to say they're real women, but they're not. Upon her on of a fagest hap of two. Hap of two wit on comer a faggot. Hap of to tain it a pot of his tea. And so, we gotta get these boys off the boys. We gotta get some women out there to the camp with them. We gotta get them some women on the boat. If you drink a pot of his tea, you go to Hades. That's the old Greek word for hell. AIDS. AIDS. You're going to AIDS. AIDS, he came from Cronus, he came from time, and Rhea, spirit of wood. That's what it says in the Hebrew. But the tree of knowledge of good and evil is to edit. The edit a tuber, their roots. And from axe, edit a tuber, cutting up the roots of the tree. So that's when they said, oh, we better get some women out there to these boys out here in the army. They're all in the camp alone. And so this I-O, it becomes a E. And the Lord is the cure. The cures at. The cures it has. And this is often followed by a ton, which means the host on is, the one who's carrying it, the host on. And this read is a eyes, as a wise, and wise cures, and wise cures it has of a call on hiney. To call on the hiney is of call on the hiney. And just look at this, I know that in the Hebrew, la is not, and good is tub, T-U-B, a lot of, And here it's under Adam names the animals, but it's a lot of, which actually reads as an N before the A, but that's where they get that not is good, it's not of. But it says a lot of they what had 'em. That's what's going on Epstein's island. In the Greek they call this God makes the woman. But in the Hebrew it's Adam names the animals, And a lot of they what had 'em love to. And then back we're starting with the A. The soul. The soul was reckoned to. You're going to visit Hades. God of the dead is where the soul gets reckoned. Wise cures it has of call on, hine it on thereupon moaning, fees 'em in of two, botched on the cat oughtn't, should not. And the place in it has it ject. It ject is jis, comes out of this place, the jis. pant at a dare you to. And a wager of, I dare you to a wager of. I bet you $5 you won't take them panties off, girl. The wager of, upon to tap it. Vav, up, upon to tap it hein. And to vour on of, to eat it up. And which a gag in, and he led Gog and Magog, the ones that are gagged, and Magog from Gog, the ones that's leading them, and which the gag in. So this is the one being led, and which gagging of to forced on had a maiden. Everything he touched turns to gold. He's a pimp. Had to maiden. Tickle. A tickle is they of two upon. Of two upon. Of on the call is in. Of to had 'em. Such in its ozone. Such Enzo's on. Enzo, name meaning the home ruler. To attune 'em. And the double A, the first one reads as a Y. Attune 'em, yeah, what to. And so all this in called his name. This is the tune. You're gonna sing my tune. To attune 'em, yeah, what to. But every time it says name, it doesn't always say the name. And you'll see it up here often in the rivers. And it's usually on a motto. It's not their name, it's their motto. But I want to cut this off here. And I'll go to the Hebrew in the next one. And I'll show you where it was I figured out this IE reads as a A. I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.